Kim has a bachelor's degree in sociology from Loras College and her master's of public administration from Northern Illinois University. Kim lives with her husband and 2 children in Muscatine. When she's not busy working, you can find her and her family taking on ambitious home improvement projects or hiking at a national park. Take it away, Kim.
All right, thanks, Megan. All right, so today I'm going to walk you through how AIMS Leadership Council underwent a strategic planning process to really increase our community impact, and then thinking about how we needed to make our partnership sustainable financially and kind of infrastructure staffing wise, so that we can implement our plan that we have for over the next 5 years. So when I talk about AIM, I always really like to start with our leadership council. I'm not going to read you all the names or anything, but I just want to show that there's very broad community support. All 3 school districts in the county are a part of this initiative. We have employers, we have nonprofit leaders, we have government leaders, and it's, I think this is one of the keys to our success is the broad community support. So I always really like to point that out. So some background on Aligned Impact Muscatine County. In 2014, community leaders really started discussions about wanting to use the collective impact framework to solve complex community issues that the community had been facing for decades. You know, our high school graduation rate is something that has been an issue the community's wanted to improve for years and years. This group of community leaders kept meeting and really felt like there was no way for them to implement the collective impact framework by each of these community leaders taking a chunk of work. You couldn't have the director of United Way, a superintendent of a school district, director of the Y, positions like that, kind of trying to piecemeal overseeing the implementation of collective impact. So that group started looking for funding to staff a position. And the end of 2015 was when the group found out about the Iowa College Aid Course to College grants. And we got that grant in 2016 to start Aligned Impact Muscatine. We weren't countywide at that time in 2016, and our fiscal agent and I'm housed at United Way of Muscatine. In 2018, we decided to expand to the county, so it wasn't just the Muscatine School District. It was also the West Liberty School District and the Wilton School District then joined on. And then in the middle of 2019, we really started having a conversation at the Leadership Council meetings that we felt like we were necessarily making the impact we hoped to make in the community. Things weren't exactly structured the way we wanted. And even the Leadership Council themselves questioned, are we really all on the same page here with what AIM's role is in the community and accomplishing these goals? We had been doing work in kindergarten readiness. We had been doing work in attendance, post-secondary enrollment, and adult education. But we just really weren't seeing the results we were hoping to see, and thought that we could be doing things better. In the fall of 2019, we decided to join the Strive Together network. Strive Together is a national organization that supports communities doing cradle to career collective impact work. When DREAMA spoke about their education initiatives, they're also part of the Strive Together network. And then in the fall of 2019, and then up until now in 2020, the Leadership Council has been going through a strategic planning and staffing plan sort of process. I will say it did take longer than planned due to COVID, especially because when COVID hit, I met with the director of United Way and the director of our community foundation, both of whom are also on AIM's Leadership Council, and we decided that AIM really should be the community convener of social services and school districts around COVID. That isn't taking up as much time as it was, but March, April, May, that took a lot of AIM's time and focus working on that coordination and addressing collaboration for crisis during that time period. So our strategic planning process got a little bit slowed down, but we decided to keep moving forward with it. And I remember a leadership council meeting, I think it was in May, we kind of took stock of what had we done for our strategic plan and what still was left to do, and how was everyone feeling about moving forward in light of the pandemic. And a leadership council member said, we need to keep moving forward with this strategic plan, because us having goals and aspirations is really what's going to give us hope to move forward. So that really got everyone re-energized and kind of picking up the strategic planning process and keep moving forward with it. So the group redid our mission and our very aspirational goals. This was a very good process to go through, to have the group rewrite all that together, because then it really got everyone on the same page and in agreement with what we want to accomplish. And if you notice, our goals are very aspirational. You know, every child enters kindergarten ready to learn. Every child succeeds academically. Every student graduates from high school prepared for post-secondary or career training. Every adult has completed the education to be able to sustain a family. We kept our goals very aspirational, and then we use our SMART targets to really set those concrete data-driven goals, but we very purposely kept our goals aspirational. So I make this slide not for you to actually see the data, but just to kind of get an idea of how much different data we looked at. This is just a snapshot of it. But what we did after redoing our mission and aspirational goals was we looked at trend line data. We looked at data before, but we even went 10 years back if we could. If we could go 10 years back, we went 10 years back. If we could segment the data, we segmented the data, and we took each data piece from cradle to career and had conversations as a group. Now this part we did pre-COVID, so it was literal big charts on the wall, data walk around the room, and then flip pad writing down ideas. But we had conversations about what were the factors that were impacting the data positively, and then what were factors impacting the data negatively. Because you know, maybe high school graduation rates weren't where we wanted to see them, that doesn't mean we didn't have key things going on in the community that was positively impacting those numbers. So we really mindfully looked at things that were working well and then things that were working against that data being where we wanted it to be. So that was when we kind of started diving deeper, thinking past just our aspirational goals. From there, and again, this is just kind of to show you that we developed a timeline. I don't expect you to read the nitty gritty, and I'll have these documents available for you afterwards. But the Leadership Council took the data from the data walk, took the factor analysis where we, you know, then discussed what were the key drivers behind our data, and then they set SMART targets. When we decided to create our SMART targets around the cradle to career continuum, we were extremely specific in what we wanted to accomplish and by when we wanted to accomplish it. And we took into account the realities of the data that we're facing right now. So for example, we decided for the first time that we want to work in the space of early literacy. And our measurement is third grade reading. Well, as you all know, those state assessments didn't happen this spring. So our SMART target, we have X's in there for the percentage and notes about how we want to increase 5% a year over so many years. And then we're gonna put in the state assessment data from this year, assuming hopefully that can be done. Because we know we're going to be looking at these SMART targets every year, and we didn't want gaps in data and everything that was going on with COVID to hold us back in any way. We wanted to keep moving forward, so we knew things weren't going to be as polished as we wanted them, but we weren't going to let, I think in another session, someone said, you know, not letting perfection get in your way of moving forward. And that was really the attitude we took with all this. So just to give you an example of one of our 7 SMART targets, we set 7 cradle to career. I threw up the post-secondary one because I think it probably applies the most to this group and gives a good example of how very specific we got when setting our SMART target. So we want to increase post-secondary enrollment within 1 year after high school of students of color by 10%, and then students on free and reduced lunch also by 10%. And we put in there, what does that mean in whole numbers? Because as we're setting these SMART targets, and then we need to think about interventions, we really need to think about how many students, individuals, families are we really trying to impact when we think about setting them. When we looked at our adult SMART target, and we set one around how many adults with a high school or equivalent education to move into some sort of post-secondary, you know, be it certificate, certification, everything that this group really defines as quote unquote college. When we looked at 5%, that was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of adults. We knew that even though the percentage seemed so small in whole numbers, we didn't feel like we had the capacity to make that big of change. So for that SMART target, we use whole numbers and no percentages at all. So I personally found looking at the whole numbers in relation to the percentages to be very helpful when thinking about what you can actually accomplish. So then, again, I don't expect you to read this, and I'll have this information available. When we move from the SMART targets that the Leadership Council set onto what our strategy networks are doing, and we call our action network strategy networks, I've been using what's called a key driver diagram. Now, the only key driver diagram that is complete is for our post-secondary action network, because that's the one that's been around the longest. And we were already rolling pretty strong in this area anyway. But what the key driver diagram does is, you know, we took the factors and drivers that the Leadership Council identified, reviewed them, tweaked them to what the boots on the ground really thought were the most impactful. It's all tied to that SMART target. But then on the side with the interventions, that team really thought about what can we be doing, and then we broke it up into quick wins and more system change thinking to really impact those factors as we think about designing interventions. And you know, I don't talk about key driver diagrams like this usually in action teams, because this sounds fairly academic, but it really is a visual description of kind of the theory of change, right? The idea is that these interventions will impact these drivers that will have the biggest impact on our SMART target. So that's kind of how we look at this. So once we got these SMART targets set in place, we really had to look at how are we structured, and we did some of this work in tandem with setting the SMART targets. You know, what are our current strategy networks, and then where are the gaps? So we already had people gathered around early education, post-secondary, adult, and we help coordinate community organizations and school district staff, specifically at Muscatine Community School District. But those action teams aren't going to get the SMART targets accomplished that we set. Something we started about a year ago, in addition to those specific strategy networks, was a community data team. And I have found that team to be invaluable. Working on creating shared measures, cradle to career, is a huge undertaking. And I really found that having people who touch every point of that spectrum and who collect data in that, bringing that group together to do that work, which I'll talk a little bit about next, has really strengthened our network a lot. So we know that we're going to have to create a new strategy network around early literacy and middle math. We're thinking of creating an action team really around that extended school day, extended school year. So convening all the organizations that are working with students outside of the school day and school year, focus on academic success, with the school districts aligning that better. And then we're talking about how maybe we can incorporate our high school graduation SMART target more into our post-secondary enrollment work, since those things are so intertwined. So stay tuned to see how all that goes. But we also have kind of large projects going on, because there's a lot of other things that have to be taking place to make all this work. So I mentioned the shared measurement system. So what we're doing is creating a shared measurement system with SuccessLink. They're a software provider, data system provider, for lack of a better term. And we're going to be putting data from all 3 school districts into it, and then data from community programs into it. And then long-term, we're looking not to have it just be K-12, but to be able to put birth to 5 information in there, and then the post-secondary kind of National Student Clearinghouse type data. So it's a full system, and we can do a better job of evaluating what's working and what isn't. We need to really up our communications game. If you look at AIM's Facebook page, I actually recommend you don't, because I honestly can't remember the last time I posted something, because the work gets busy, and we frankly don't always make time for that communications plan. But it's so important getting the community involved to have good communication out there. One thing our leadership council has been wanting to improve from the beginning is community engagement. I think we've scratched the surface. We've done the surveys, we've done the focus group. We've asked people for feedback periodically, but moving forward, we know that we're not going to make a huge impact on our outcomes unless we have people with lived experience at the table, co-designing, giving feedback on, helping evaluate and design the work. So that's something we've started to put in motion. And the way we're able to scale up some of our infrastructure is that we got a leadership and talent grant through Strive Together. And that grant has allowed us to move forward with purchasing the shared measurement system, and also provide stipends to partner organizations to help provide some of those other backbone services that I just don't have the capacity to do it all. So for example, United Way of Muscatine's communication person was part-time, was interested in having more hours. So now starting October 1st, so we're like a week in, a stipend is being paid to United Way of Muscatine to also provide the communication management support for AIM. Is just one example of how we're doing that. So when we look at the importance of data and making decisions in all of this, we drilled down from community level outcomes to indicators to contributing indicators from cradle to career. So I'm just going to show you the post-secondary slice again, because I think it's probably the most applicable to this group, but just keep in mind that we've done this birth through career. So we outline what our community level outcome is. So post-secondary enrollment is our community level outcome. Our core indicator, so how we're going to measure that, is the percent of students who enroll in post-secondary institutions within 12 months of graduating. There's an existing measure in place. And then we know that we're missing military and apprenticeships. And one thing I did want to note that I probably should have said when I was talking about our SMART target is everyone really getting on the same page with what you mean when you're measuring things. We have a whole sheet of notes for exactly how we're calculating those SMART targets, but with the post-secondary, when we talked about how we're going to measure percent of students enrolled within 12 months of graduation, what does that mean? If you look at the AEA prep trends data, they look at percentage of that high school class. If you look at some National Student Clearinghouse reports, those look at the percentage of high school graduates. So those are 2 very different things because the denominators are different. Our post-secondary strategy network decided that, like we care what happens to all students, and the students who don't graduate high school, they're, going to be staying in our community, and we want them to be successful too. So we purposefully picked percent of class, not percent of graduates for our SMART target and our core indicator for post-secondary enrollment. So I just really want to drive that point home to make sure everyone understands how your data is being calculated, because that really impacts things. And then we drill down to contributing indicators, because you don't want to be surprised or think, okay, we did these interventions and I just really, 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 really hope post-secondary enrollment is going to increase. You want to know by measuring things along the way that you know are correlated to that community level outcome. So we chose percent of students who are participating in college level advanced coursework, FAFSA completion rates, and then post-secondary intentions, including career and work, because we want to be looking at that too. And then we put down what are those existing measures? Where are we getting that data from? So we're getting our college level advanced coursework from the Iowa School Performance Profiles. I think everyone on this call knows we get our FAFSA completion information thanks to Iowa College Aid, and then the post-secondary intentions, the AEA measures based on the senior exit survey. So we did this, but we have it again from cradle to career. So I'm just showing you a slice of it, and if anyone's interested in what the whole document looks like, I'd be happy to share that. So we want to make sure that Aligned Impact Muscatine County is sustainable, that we are going to be around and functioning to make this 5-year plan, to see our 5-year SMART targets come to fruition, right? So I kind of look at income in two different areas. We need income for operations, and then we need income for specific projects that we're working on. So the income that we currently have for our operations is the Iowa College Aid Commission, these course to college grants, is our major source of funding, hands down. We also, as I said, got money from Strive Together through their Strategic Initiatives Fund for our Leadership and Talent Grant. That's a 1-year grant, so we can pilot out this sharing of backbone services with partner organizations and see how it goes. Hopefully it goes well, and then that lines us up to be able to request future funding showing that it works. United Way of Muscatine does provide some cash in addition to loaning the office space. United Way of Muscatine's board they started strategic plan a few years ago and decided to really focus on financial stability. I know the Alice report has been brought up, kind of centered around the Alice report without getting into it too much, but they decided looking forward, they're really going to focus on two sides of that equation to help people be more financially stable. On the expense side, housing, and then on the income side, education. Because as we know, increased education typically leads to higher incomes, better jobs. So the United Way of Muscatine board is adopting aims, goals, outcomes, indicators, contributing indicators for their education work going forward. And they're going to be using the shared data system that AIM is implementing as a part of their future grants centered around education. So we are more or less providing some services to United Way around their strategic plan. And then United Way of Muscatine applied for the payroll protection program, that forgivable loan, and included AIM's payroll in that. And so we did get that. I think we just found out today that was forgiven. Very exciting. And we're using those funds as reserves. So this will be the first time that we have reserves. To me, that's very important because we've always just been exactly at budget. And if something happens, if maybe some other funding doesn't come in as expected, or if, I always worry, like, what would I do if my laptop broke? We just don't have these extra technology funds built in the budget. So we're using that as reserves, which just kind of makes me feel better thinking about things long term. And then we have income for specific projects. So our post-secondary strategy network joined Strive Together's post-secondary transition action community. That action community, we meet once a month, our team with teams across the country once a month for 6 months. We're skipping November, but they provide kind of professional development and then times to talk to people from across the country about what they're doing in that space. That project is very focused on increasing post-secondary education enrollment of students of color and students on free and reduced lunch. And they're also helping us think about how to handle things in light of COVID. It's supported by Strive Together, IHI, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was going to be funding travel for everyone to be able to see each other for this project. So instead, each community is getting funds to specifically engage students and families in creating solutions to increase post-secondary enrollment. Those funds, this just happened a couple weeks ago, so I'll be sure to keep everyone updated if you're interested on how exactly we executed those funds and got that extra community engagement. We have some ideas and we're pretty excited about it. We also get cash from the Muscatine Community School District, convening the community organizations with the school district staff to try and reduce barriers for students and families. We have a contract essentially to provide those services to the school district for a little bit of cash each year. And then the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine has been absolutely instrumental in funding small projects. So they've funded Course to College for years, as far as, you know, supplies and food for FAFSA nights, for college decision day events, for posters and flyers about college going culture sort of stuff. And then most recently, we just a couple of days ago got a grant from the Community Foundation to purchase some National Student Clearinghouse data, because we want data faster for our post-secondary team, as we're really trying to increase enrollment and want to see are the interventions we're doing now having an impact. Because if not, then we need to rethink about it. We don't want to wait 2 years, even though we have those contributing indicators. We want to get that enrollment information a little sooner than the state can provide it. So that's what we're using, kind of our newest Community Foundation grant. So at this time, I'm going to open it up for any questions anyone might have. I think I'll stop sharing my screen unless someone has something they want me to throw back up there.
Kim, I would just say that in combination with what Anne and Megan have shared with us about sustainability, your like living experience in this is just so impressive. I've been impressed with you. I was impressed with you already, but now that's just gone over the top. You shared so mof ideas that just have my brain kind of running on fast speed to think about all of the different, the breadth of what you're doing. We are focused in our LCAN on our youth from 16 to 24 and, you know, college access, and we hope attainability, but you have such a huge slice, and the impact is pretty powerful in your community. And did am I right in referencing that this is a county-wide, Muscatine County, right, Kim?
Yes, correct. And thank you, Donna. You're very sweet.
Oh, well, I'm just sincere as can be. I'm just so impressed, Kim. Thanks for all you shared with us and the promise of getting some of these things to hold in our hands to use as guides for our work. You're doing a great job.
I definitely agree with Donna. I've always appreciated Kim's nuts and bolts. I think with our LCAN, with the grant and all, we kind of get a house. You know, then we have to build all those different rooms. And every time I talk to her, it's always nice to get the nuts and bolts of how she's doing things and really being able to just share and being very, very open to sharing. That's one of the best parts. And then just that collective action that she just lives and breathes. So really appreciate it, especially the kind of like looking into the future of year 5 or year 4 of what it looks like between sustainability of making sure that we have that grant money.
Thanks, Lee.
Metaphorically of like the house and the nuts and the bolts and building the rooms. I like it.
I too appreciate everything that Kim's doing and all that she shared with us. One thing, I guess, Kim, and you helped me a lot last week when I was in a rut. I truly appreciate that. And I highly recommend anybody else, any other coordinators, stressing over some of these things to reach out to her because she is very insightful and very willing to help. And I appreciate that, Kim. One of the things I wanted to ask though is I know you are full-time doing this now, and I wonder if there are any recommendations or any specifics you could suggest to those of us that are doing it part-time. Like, what are the key things we should focus on, or what, when you were starting, I believe you were part-time as well. Like, what were some of the things you strived for when you were part-time?
Right. So when we first got the grant, it was a very different grant system. There was a planning grant that was, I think, between $5,000 and $10,000, and it was just to help you pay someone to get the data and kind of circle the wagons, more or less. And so that 2 months that I did that, while also still being the resource development manager for United Way, was the only time I was part-time. Once AIM officially became AIM, I did become full-time. I would say though, when thinking about being part-time, our community very, very purposely decided to be cradle to career. When our community looked at the data and saw our kindergarten readiness information and then saw our adult education level compared to workforce needs, they very strategically made the decision to go cradle to career. I would not expect a community with a part-time coordinator to have that wide of a focus. I would expect a much narrower focus, maybe more like how Donna is talking about 16 to 24. I would look at your community's data to see what does that slice need to be. Does it need to be taking a look at middle math, because that impacts high school graduation so much? Do you need to be looking at middle math through post-secondary enrollment, more focused on high school to college pipeline? Or does that seem to be going well and the wheels start to fall off for like credit accrual in high school, then into post-secondary and remedial classes? Or do you have a large adult population? Like what is your slice that, one, is going to make the biggest impact, and two, that people have the most energy around? And then just setting a reasonable amount of SMART targets. Maybe you only have 2. Maybe you only have 2 community level outcomes and a few contributing indicators under each. So I would just see where the community need matches the passion to pick a slice of this. If you're part-time, is my recommendation.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Or if there was something I showed that you want me to go back to, or extra documents you would like me to include between the PowerPoint, I'd be happy, or in addition to the PowerPoint, I'd be happy to.
Well, I think I'll make sure there's nothing coming through on the chat. If that kind of brings us to a natural stopping point, we'll go ahead, of course, and share Kim's slides and other materials out in our Google Drive next week. And is there anything, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything else we want to touch on as we kind of wrap up here and close our 2020 virtual convening?
Yeah, well, just thank you so much to all of our speakers. I'm especially, thank you to our practitioners, to Donna and Kim for sharing your expertise. I think that was just invaluable. I have been sort of taking notes on parking lot items that we can follow up on. So I don't want anybody to feel like this is the end of the conversation. We sort of started some good conversations and have some good ideas in my mind for future coordinator meetings as far as topics and workshops that we could be doing. So just want to thank everybody for your time and your attention, in this virtual environment.
I do see that Gayla has raised her hand. Gayla, you should be able to unmute yourself. Gayla, are you there?
No.
Hi, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, it was by accident.
Oh, an accidental hand raise. No worries. And also, I would echo Anne's words in thanking all of our presenters and everyone, and also a special shout out to Tressa Schultz, our valiant person who has helped us really keep things moving behind the scenes as far as setting up the webinars and technical support and everything else. So Tressa, shout out to you as well.
Thanks, guys.
Second that.
Okay, I think then we'll go ahead and call it. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. We'll be following up next week, so you'll be hearing from us. But take care.
Well done. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.